The Miami Heat won the first game of a back-to-back set versus the Toronto Raptors. So we look back at the game and which Heat players stood out. Plus, we break down the latest on Caleb Martin's altercation and how Miami responds and what have been the biggest surprises of the early season so far. All that and more on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on all things Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app, thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. My name is Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Caleb Martin will serve a one-game suspension, which means the Heat will have to go with a new starting lineup tonight against the Raptors. We'll talk through some of those options in a minute, but let's jump right in with some credit cookies for Saturday's win over the Raptors, the first win of the season for the Miami Heat, David. There's a lot of credit to go around for this one, but what kind of cookies do we have, and who gets the first batch?
Well, my son's been eating the alphabet cookies from Trader Joe's of late, so I think it's appropriate because Miami has to kind of get down to basics and reform their identity after a sluggish start to the season. So I thought that was appropriate.
All right.
So we'll give away 10 alphabet cookies to the Heat players that deserve them the most, and I think we start off with the former Raptor himself, because to me, I don't think he had the biggest impact in the game, but he certainly set the tone early and often, and I think that's Kyle Lowry. I think his game was overall fantastic. Started off the game with a steal and then followed it up with a bizarre missed layup, but he had some other key moments throughout the game, including hitting a big shot down the stretch to help Miami pull away with the victory. So I think he deserves, I'd say, 3 credit cookies.
3 would be, I think, the floor of the amount of alphabet cookies Kyle Lowry gets. I mean, This was a good performance, building on I thought it was a positive performance even in the loss that they had before, where obviously the first night with Kyle Lowry, opening night against Chicago, it just didn't look good. You and I talked about it in the recap after the game, and I thought his game against Boston and then certainly this game against Toronto just looked a lot better, a lot more aggressive. He put up 11 shots, which was third most on the team. That's where it should be for Kyle Lowry. I know that he's your traditional point guard who wants to get guys involved, but in today's game and in this offense too, you need your point guard to take shots. I love when he's able to come off of screens, step into those threes when he's coming off of a BAM screen or something like that. If it's open, just shoot it. No need to overthink it. No need to be, unselfish to a fault, which I think sometimes he can be. And I like the level of aggression that we saw in that Raptors game. So 3 cookies, that sounds good to me. We also have to give some credit cookies to Jimmy Butler. 24 points on 7 of 16 shooting, getting to the free throw line again, 9 of 11 from the free throw line, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, an all-around really good effort from Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, after a game in which he took 0 free throws against the Boston Celtics, it was good to see him be able to just control the pace of the game. He never felt like it was too rushed. Might have overworked a little bit more than was necessary, but I think that's just part of who Jimmy is. He's always going to try to do his best to get to the rim and draw contact. And with the physical nature of the Toronto Raptors, it was bound to happen. And then, 11 free throws is very impressive. But again, also just great defense overall, fantastic shot selection, not finishing at the rim as well as he should be. And I've seen some people kind of discuss Jimmy's struggles at the rim as to whether or not this might be somewhat lackadaisical. I don't know if that's necessarily the right term. I think he might be looking a little bit more for that foul call because he's gotten so used to getting it over the past couple of seasons.
Yeah.
But at the same time, just overall, as far as that game is concerned, really positive showing on both sides of the ball.
He was working that mid-range area, which was a lot of fun. It kind of reminded me of, Jimmy Butler from the playoffs, working that mid-range spot, getting to those looks that that he wants to get to.
He hit a 3.
And he had a 3 from the corner, which was great. Speaking of threes, Max Strus had 20 points off the bench, 3 of 7 overall. It was him and Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson too. Those are the guys who had multiple threes in this game. It's something that I want to touch on later, the 3-point shooting specifically. But Max Strus, 20 points off the bench. Again, you go back to that loss against the Boston Celtics and even against the Chicago Bulls. And the big issue for Miami, I thought, was its bench. We obsess over the starting lineup and some of the changes that they made and whether or not Tyler Herro is a fit there, Caleb Martin at the 4, and all these things. But the starting lineup has been fine. Moreover, in those first 2 losses, it was the bench that really wasn't sort of bringing up the back of the ship here. And I thought against Toronto, you got a big game from Max Strus. Max Strus had a really great game against Chicago, not a great game against Boston. Bounces back with a big one against Toronto, 20 points off the bench. He's got to get what? 2 or 3 cookies?
I'd give him 2 credit cookies because, I'd give Jimmy 5 and then 2, unless there's somebody else that really stands out. Like Tyler had a fantastic first half and then struggled in the second half for whatever reason. Just couldn't see. I think Toronto made it a key to try and limit his touches, and he was fantastic. At one point, he was their leading scorer, leading rebounder, leading assist man, and yet somehow that production tapered off. So I don't know that he necessarily warrants a credit cookie. Could you give him half a cookie for his first half performance?
You know me, I'm always going to give Tyler Herro cookies if he wants cookies. But I do think Gabe Vincent deserves a cookie. If we're going to give one away, I thought he had a really nice game. Look, it wasn't eye-popping numbers, but he had 9 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 of 7 shooting, 1 of 5. It wasn't like terribly efficient, but I thought he just played a really good floor game. And then when Caleb Martin got ejected in midway through the third quarter, there was a lot of minutes there with Gabe and Kyle Lowry together in the backcourt, and I thought Gabe played off the ball pretty well. I just liked his floor game overall, and I just think he deserved a cookie.
Yeah, I could have sworn I saw Fred VanVleet shed a single tear as he saw Gabe Vincent flourishing alongside Kyle Lowry. But maybe that was just me. I don't know. As far as Max is concerned, offensively he was fantastic. I've got to say, defensively, I'm not sure if this is just going to be the norm for Max throughout the rest of his career, but it looks like it's going to take him some period of adjustment the same way it did last year for him to find his footing defensively. Like, we make it seem like Max turned into an all-NBA level defender by the end of the season. It's not to knock on him, but I think the early criticism of why he wasn't getting that playing time when he first joined the team was, he's not particularly good. He's a shooter. He can slash because he's got that athletic ability, but there are problems defensively, and then eventually he was able to correct those. He struggled defensively. So I'll give him plenty of credit for his offensive game, at least tonight, because, again, against the Celtics, he was not shooting the ball well. But overall, I'd say he had a positive impact, but he kind of gave up almost as many points as he added to the scoreboard.
Rank these 3 players in terms of who's the best defensively. Max Strus, Tyler Herro, Duncan Robinson.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's been Tyler.
Yep.
Look, he's been attacked constantly, and I think that's just going to be the standard. It's like, okay, I see the white boy in my sights, I'm going to go after him and do whatever it takes. And I think that's just the way NBA players are going to start attacking Tyler Herro, continue to attack, because that's been who he has been for these seasons already. But he's holding his own. Like, the strength, he's not getting to the line as much as I'd like, but overall, in terms of his being able to absorb contact defensively, I think he's done a great job. Really active hands, knocking the ball out of people when they're bringing the ball down low, and he's able to reach in there and poke it free, leading to a turnover. But it's just, if you're going to get targeted 20-something plus possessions per game, you're going to give up some of those. If you're going to be screened and re-screened multiple times, and they're going to try to get you into these actions where they can exploit what they perceive to be a bad match for Miami, then he's just going to get attacked nonstop, and that's just the case. But I think overall his defense has been pretty solid.
The muscle, the strength that he had in the offseason, it's been very apparent on the defensive end. To your point, on the offensive end, I've seen it a little bit on the straight line drives where he's able to finish through contact a little bit easier. He had that great lob over Precious Achiuwa, and then he gave him the too small celebration, looking right into Precious's face. It was so good.
Yeah, didn't
he? Yes, he did. But defensively, you're really seeing him hold his own a little bit. He's not getting moved off his spot as easily. And look, he's always been a good team defender, Tyler Herro, in the sense that he just knows where to be, right? He's not always going to defend at a high level because of some of the natural limitations that he has physically, but he knows where he's supposed to be for the most part. I think the first couple of games, there were, and still are, some adjustments on that end, mostly with how much opponents are going to try to get Tyler involved in the action, and then how guys like Jimmy and Kyle Lowry and Bam have to cover up for him. There's just some differences there, subtle differences that they're going to make. And we're going to see those adjustments continue. But I think overall, Tyler Herro has probably been the best defender of that group. And then I might even say Duncan Robinson has been better than Max Strus defensively. Like, Duncan Robinson has not been fouling as much as we're accustomed to him fouling. And I think you're right. With Strus, it seems a little, maybe it is just an adjustment period to start. I don't know what it is exactly, but
the Duncan thing has been, we kind of jokingly suggested that he might play some minutes at the 4 when there were so many questions about who would step up in that regard, because he has he's slower. There's no denying that. I think he'd be the first to tell you he's not the quickest guy on the floor. But I think he's also long and strong enough to be able to kind of absorb that contact and, play up in terms of who he guards defensively. So I think he can handle some fours and some bigger threes and things of that sort. Yeah. And he's, he moves laterally okay. And I think overall, to your point about Tyler, I think Duncan certainly knows where he should be too. He doesn't make many mistakes in that sort. He just doesn't have the elite speed to close out quickly or to recover if somebody gets past him. He doesn't have the kind of height and length to be able to swat shots at the rim if somebody does wind up making a move on him or something along those lines. But overall, I think he's been solid. He just hasn't been getting a lot of playing time, and I wonder if this is just the good place for him to be in terms of what Spo thinks the rotation should be. And I'm sure that will change tonight because Miami will be missing a key player.
That's right. And we're going to talk about maybe a silver lining to this is Spo having an opportunity to experiment with a new starting lineup. We're going to talk about that next. But first, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks Daily Fantasy made easy. And all you have to do to play is pick 2 to 5 players. And if they're going to score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 extra money on any entry. And the best part, no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections that are available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. The NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, the WNBA, esports, and so much more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. They have safe and fast withdrawals currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Tonight, I'm looking at Jimmy Butler, 23.5 points. Over under. I'm going the over on that after the night that he had the other night in the first matchup against Toronto. Kyle Lowry, 6 assists. I like Kyle Lowry going over on 6 assists too. So give me the over on Butler, 23.5 points. The over on Lowry, 6 assists. Download the PrizePicks app or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up or for an instant deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. All right, back here with Locked On Heat. We're going to talk about some of the surprises that we've had through the first week of the season here in a minute, including some observations on Miami's three-point shooting. But also, thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. Make sure to make your second listen game-to-game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On game-to-game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on the Locked On NBA podcast feed. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Caleb Martin suspended for 1 game by the NBA after the league determined that he was the instigator in a scuffle with one Christian Coloco during Miami's win over the Raptors on Saturday. Also suspended Heat rookie Nikola Jovic for leaving the bench during an incident. That's not nice. Dude's 19. I'm sure he didn't know the rule. He broke the rule, I guess, but that sucks for Jovic. He's going to lose 15
Making an
grand.
example of him. That's just,
I know.
That's not right, NBA. You should be
He's a nice guy, man. Like,
just have, he's a kid out there. He doesn't know what's going on. He's just like, hey, my guy's getting beat up. I want to be able to step in.
Yeah.
He was just trying to help. He doesn't know.
Do we want to discuss this?
I'm sure. Yeah, I'll talk about the fight because I'm kind of like, I'm a little confused. I was actually there. I saw it, how it played out, and heard from Caleb after the game and everything else like that. I don't think he was an instigator in the very least. I think your boy, Christian Coloco, was an instigator for sure. Like it had been, as Caleb mentioned, a number of plays leading up to the quote-unquote altercation or whatever, because Coloco juggling for position there, throwing elbows. He was hooking Martin, when he was juggling for position there,
trying to get
that rebound.
Yeah.
So he was using some very physical, advantages there because of his size and strength and length and everything else like that. And Caleb, he got tangled up. He fell down. Coloco fell down. And then I think Martin should have gotten a technical for his role in it because he did stand over him. And, you can think of that as a punk move. I know Raptors fans have been very critical of Caleb Martin. I didn't see anything wrong. Caleb Martin is one of the most soft-spoken guys on the team, and it must have taken quite a bit for him to get to this point. Not that he's going to shy away from contact, clearly, or even, willingness to fight or anything like that. But he's just, I don't think he's going out there to be scrappy and looking for a fight. He's not a punk or anything like that. He's not a dirty player. He stood over Coloco.
That was
hey, Rook, don't do this anymore. Watch those bows. And then Koloko stands up and wraps him up. It's like, hey, man, you're going to wrap me up. I'm going to tackle you down to the ground. Like, I totally get that. I don't see what should Mar have done? Back away and said, no, I'll let you kind of bring me down to the floor.
It was the standing over Koloko. That was the problem. And you're right.
It's a technical, though, in today's league. I don't think
if you were going to suspend Caleb Martin, you should have also suspended Christian Koloko. Like, how Koloko does not get suspended, and yet Jovic does for just sort of hanging around. That to me is wild. Like, Caleb Martin being suspended. Look, if you want to suspend him for it, suspend him for it early in the season, making an example. We're not going to fine, whatever. But also make sure you suspend Christian Koloko. The fact that all he got was fined and not suspended, that to me, I don't understand that. All that said, no Caleb Martin, no Nikola Jovic, right? No Victor Oladipo, no Omer Yurtseven, already ruled out for tonight's game against the Raptors too. So where do we expect Eric Spoelstra to go now with this starting group? Because I do think that there's an opportunity now to maybe experiment with he's going to have to experiment with a different starting lineup. It'll be the second starting lineup used this season. And so, we've talked so much about the fact that Caleb Martin was going to be your, quote unquote power forward going into the year. I do wonder where they can go. They're not going to go big, right? Yurtseven's still out, so you're not going to have that twin tower lineup. They don't really want to play Bam and Dwayne Dedmon together. I know you've been pining for Jamal Cain. I think I would guess, given that there's 4 players out already, they're probably going to activate him for his first game this season while he's on that 2-way contract. Perhaps he even gets the start there at power forward. They could go Haywood Highsmith, who we've seen get some front court minutes. What do you think they do?
I think they go Highsmith to start. Max seems like the easiest option, right? Experience as a starter. He played with this rotation before. He closed out the game. He's been there in these big moments. That makes too much sense, but we've just seen from Eric Spoelstra repeatedly over the course of his career say, you know what? I like keeping my rotations intact. Next man up, Max, you continue to be the 6th man off the bench. Given that, I think Highsmith gets the start, even if that's a quick plug, because we've seen Haywood get into foul trouble early on. Maybe put him out there to see if he's able to hold on to and try to do his best when guarding Pascal Siakam or any of those bigs, OG Anunoby or Anunoby. I always forget how to pronounce that correctly. Anunoby, let's say.
Anunoby.
He is a big body, obviously strong in his own right. So I wonder if Highsmith is probably better equipped to guard him than either Max or Jamal Cain. Cain probably can hold his own a little bit better. I wouldn't want to throw Strus out there against that starting lineup, given exactly that he's come off the bench and provided that spark offensively. So my guess would be Highsmith with Strus coming in and Cain getting maybe 5 to 10 minutes again.
I agree with you on Strus. Also, considering that Victor Oladipo is not yet available, you need some sort of 6th man kind of scoring presence off the bench, and that has been Max Strus for 2 out of the first 3 games for the Heat. So I think they keep Max Strus coming off the bench, and you make a good point against this long Toronto front starting lineup. I don't know that you necessarily want Strus in that matchup. I think Haywood Highsmith makes a lot of sense. It's an opportunity to see what he looks like in that starting lineup. You and I heard a little bit of scuttle during kind of training camp and after summer league. Hey, don't count Highsmith out of starting completely this year. Like, he could end up earning that starting power forward job. I think Caleb Martin obviously won that job. Haywood Highsmith, his preseason was a little underwhelming, so he didn't go out there and exactly earn it. But this will give him an opportunity to at least show what he can do alongside Bam and Lowry and Jimmy Butler and Tyler Herro. I also wouldn't count out Jamal Cain. It wouldn't Eric Spoelstra has done weird stuff in the past with his starting lineup. It would, considering again that Haywood Highsmith is basically your 3rd center off the bench right now because Yurtseven is out. Does Spoelstra kind of look at him and be like, you know what, we're gonna use him off the bench because he's a little bit more versatile. We're not gonna play Cain at center. It's enough of a stretch to play Highsmith at center, and we're only doing it because we have to. I do wonder if we see Cain start. It wouldn't shock me. It would not shock me.
What about Duncan? I mean, that's also an option.
I guess. But to the same thing with it is an option. Defensively, I think there's going to be concerns with Duncan and Tyler. I think that's why they've not wanted to do that. And to your same point with Strus, like, that's kind of it's Max Strus and Duncan Robinson spacing the floor around Gabe Vincent and Dwayne Dedmon in that second unit. That's kind of how they've been doing it. But it's definitely an option. Gabe Vincent could be an option. You could just go small with Jimmy Butler at the 4 and play 2 guards with Tyler Herro as your 3rd guard, basically. But I don't think they would do that against a big Toronto team either. That would surprise me as well. All right, so the other thing about this, do we like, now that Caleb Martin is suspended for 1 game, we've seen him in that starting lineup for 3 games, just overall feel for the starting lineup now that we've basically gone through a week with Caleb Martin at that 4 spot?
Flashes of positivity, but overall not a great strength. Like you mentioned it, they've held their own. They've been fine. They are not the problem through the 2 losses. That's been the bench that hasn't stepped up. But part of the reason why is because they're missing a key ingredient of last year's bench, which was Caleb Martin, the spark plug, coming in there for those limited games when he was on a 2-way contract and always making an impact, always doing something memorable to change the course in Miami's favor. So I think there is a problem there. They just don't have any other options. So they're not, unless they acquire somebody via trade or look to sign somebody as a free agent. I think we're stuck with this starting lineup as it is. And they just haven't leaned enough into what we thought would be an explosion offensively, where they'd be shooting more threes, moving the ball. Instead, we've seen too much of what we saw last year, with a certain stagnancy kind of settling in there and not necessarily taking those shots when they're available to them. So I think it's been mostly positive, but plenty of negatives to be concerned about too.
Well, you mentioned the explosiveness there offensively, which we really haven't seen. There has been a pretty clear indicator as to what the Heat need to do to win games. I'm going to tell you what it is next. But first, David, tell listeners about BetOnline.
Oh, BetOnline, still your number one place to place all of your bet wagering needs. I don't know. Did you place any wagers on the Dolphins this season or this week? Because
I did not
win on Sunday.
To me, it was look.
Oh, you don't ever bet on the Dolphins. That's
no. I bet on them the first 2 weeks. Today it was a stay away. It was Tua's first game back. I didn't want to jinx it. They won. That's what matters.
All right, yeah. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Back here with Locked On Heat, we're going to do a new segment. We're calling this One-on-One. David, basically the idea being you pick one bad thing, one good thing. We go back and forth, right? That's the idea?
Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. Okay. We wanted to talk about the surprises, the things that have stood out over the season so far. You know, a small sample size. And again, teams can change easily and will change. Miami, what we see from Miami in April and in May, if they're in the playoffs, and we assume that they will be, is not going to be what we see from them at this point in time, when they're still trying to find their footing to some degree. But I don't have a lot to say about this group positively. Like we were trying to remain optimistic, and I think that's fair. Like we look at this team, they struggle against Chicago, which they probably shouldn't have. They struggle against Boston, but they've played with more effort, so that's a positive, if anything else. But overall, you look at some of the struggles they've had offensively, some of the struggles they've had defensively. It's worth noting, and at the same time, not necessarily being in a panicky state over. They got their win against Toronto. We'll see if they can even up their record with another win against Toronto before they go on to a short West Coast road trip against Portland, Golden State, and Sacramento. So those will be an interesting challenge for this young Heat team. But as far as a positive overall, I don't have much other than, well, Jimmy Butler is still Jimmy Butler. The free throw shooting against Boston notwithstanding, he's still being every bit as dynamic as he has ever been, confident in his shot. I know a lot of people, as I mentioned before, concerned about his finishing at the rim, but I think that'll improve over time. I think he'll, just continue to find his way to get the rim because, well, that's just who Jimmy is, even at 33, even at this point in his career. So I'm not concerned about Jimmy. It's been a great thing to see early on.
I'm going to go with Tyler Herro in terms of something that I thought was positive. It was one of the biggest question marks going into the season is what does Tyler Herro look like in that starting lineup, whether or not he's going to be able to keep those numbers up from a sixth-man of the year campaign when he basically averaged 20, 21 points per game on a relatively efficient shooting. And what is Tyler Herro doing as a starter? He's averaging 20 to 21 points per game on very efficient shooting. I thought he's been a very clean fit with that starting lineup. As much as we thought Caleb Martin is the plug-in guy, the glue guy, like we just said, I think it's Tyler who's been more seamless. I know defensively, like we already covered, there are things that they are figuring out, and that's just what it's going to be when you just change your starting lineup. They are figuring it out, and I trust a team coached by Eric Spoelstra with Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, and Bam Adebayo anchoring your defense. There's enough talent and basketball IQ there to figure out the defensive communication stuff, and we saw that already improve in that Toronto game. It's been improving, so it's just going to be a matter of time before they clean all that kind of stuff up. But offensively, I've been super impressed with Tyler. I just said, 20.7 points per game on 50% shooting, 39% from three-point range on 6 attempts per game, 3.3 assists, 6.7 rebounds. David, as a starter, I don't know if he had this great assist against the Raptors on Saturday night where he got trapped high up on the floor, and then whips a pass, I think, to Kyle Lowry for a three-pointer on the opposite side. That is a pass that Tyler Herro does not make last year. That last year, that's a turnover more times than not. Tyler Herro is figuring things out. And I think as a starter, it's like I said, it's been seamless, and he's already laying the groundwork potentially for an all-star campaign, at least an all-star caliber campaign. I think he's looked really good.
He's been Miami's second best player?
Behind Jimmy?
Kyle, I think Kyle's game one performance kind of takes him back. Bam's
been all right.
Struggling. Yeah, Bam's been all right. Defensively, fine. Offensively, a work in progress. Jimmy's been the top player so far, and I think that's pretty consistent. But I'd say Tyler's been number 2 on there so far. Wouldn't you agree?
I would. The one thing I would like to see him do is just take more threes, man. Like, there's no reason not to. You're only taking 6. I think he should be taking 12. I'm not even kidding. He should be taking 12 three-pointers a game. That's not a lot today in today's NBA. That goes to sort of the bad surprise, if we're going to kind of go negative now. It's just the three-point shooting. To me, it's not even so. It's just I'm confused. Why is this team taking so few three-point attempts? They are so okay with just walking up into the mid-range area and taking those shots. And they'll tell you, hey, we're taking what the defense gives us. Their defense is giving you that because you're just the Heat are an okay mid-range shooting team. This isn't the Brooklyn Nets with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, or even the Phoenix Suns with Devin Booker and Chris Paul. Those are elite mid-range shooting teams. The Heat are an okay mid-range shooting team. Like, Jimmy's good, but outside of that, like, Bam is just sort of, he's hit or miss. Tyler could be hit or miss from the mid-range area. They should not be just okay with settling for those mid-range looks. The fact that they have only taken, at most, 33-point attempts in a game, which was in their win against Toronto, by the way. The first time they even got to 30 three-pointers in a game was the one time they won. Other than that, they took 28 against Chicago, they lost. 26 three-pointers against Boston, they lost. You just have to take more threes in today's NBA. One other benchmark here. They led by 21 points at halftime. They took 23s in the first half against Toronto. They led by 20. It was a blowout. And then the Caleb Martin scuffle happened in the third quarter and whatever. They took just 10 three-pointers in the entire second half, and what happened? The Raptors came back. They outscored the Heat 59-41 in the second half and nearly stole that game back. I don't understand why this team isn't taking more threes, and we saw it. 23s in the first half, that's exactly where this team should be. They should be hovering around 43s in a game.
Yeah, I thought that's where they were trending. And a lot of that, I think, it starts off defensively, as the players have indicated to us when we talked to them about it, because they force turnovers, and then there's a fast break opportunity or even a transition opportunity where maybe a 3-and-2 or 3-on-1. There's a little bit more open spacing. The defense hasn't settled in. You get a wide open look for Tyler, Caleb, somebody. Instead, I think because Toronto found this incredible energy after the Koloko and Herro scuffle, they wound up hitting their threes. Miami kind of lost their energy a little bit. They really couldn't find it. Tyler, in particular, just wasn't much of an offensive factor in the second half. Max was eventually able to get it going, but it was an area of concern. There's just been too much, and I keep coming back to this term, stagnancy on offense, because we saw it last year too. You've got Jimmy and Bam basically clogging the paint, which is why we wanted Bam to shoot more from the mid-range and perhaps extending out to the three-point range. Has not done so yet. That's been a disappointment. And then given that, you've got 3 players basically hovering around the perimeter, and either Tyler, Caleb, or Kyle. If you've got the ball in Tyler's hands and he's going to drive mostly, try to create a mid-range opportunity. And then you've got Caleb looking on for the perimeter, or Kyle looking on for the perimeter. Neither of those guys they're not going to be slashing towards the rim. There's not enough movement on offense. And I know that's kind of an oversimplification, but you just see it where you have possessions where it's either Jimmy attacking the paint or maybe a dump down to Bam or something like that. And then you let Tyler go to work, and nothing's really moving outside of those players that have the ball in their hand.
It's been a little bit your turn, my turn, right? With this offense. Sometimes it's a Tyler Herro possession. Other times it's a Jimmy Butler possession. The best moments have been when Jimmy Butler is able to attack the paint, and then you start that swing action. He had that great assist to Max Strus, that little dump off shovel pass thing that he had. You want to see more of that. You want to see more of Jimmy and even Tyler and Kyle Lowry driving and kicking. Bam Adebayo on the short roll, kicking out to shooters. I think that's stuff that they need to see. That they need to find more opportunities to do, other than some of that your turn, my turn stuff. So I agree with you. Is that sort of your negative? Is just sort of the lack of ball movement on offense?
No, you kind of covered that already, and the lack of three-point shooting. To me, it's been the lack of a strength of the bench. I think based on what we had seen during the preseason, and I keep coming back to maybe the preseason isn't much of an indicator at all, but Spo has gone away from the rotations that we saw. We haven't seen much from Victor Oladipo, dunking in and out, not getting the kind of playing time that he might warrant. No Nikola Jovic, no Jamal Cain. You haven't been able to see much, and they just haven't provided the spark, with the exception of a couple of games here from Strus and one from Gabe, where he was solid, and mostly playing along those starters. Nothing's really popped, and we thought that the bench was going to be more of a strength for this team, but they kind of leaned into it. Jimmy playing way too many minutes for my liking this early in the season, especially considering they've got a long road trip coming up.
That's
so
probably, I would imagine when Oladipo comes back, he's going to absorb some of those Jimmy Butler minutes, especially sort of at the end of the first quarter and in the beginning of the second quarter. That's
counting on a lot. Like, I don't necessarily think that we should be counting on Oladipo to be putting up those kind of solid minutes either. Like, from what we saw in the preseason, he looked okay. And I know that we're all optimistic and hoping that he can come back and be an impactful player just because of his own journey and everything he's done to get to this point. But that's far from a given, especially if he's going to have continuing lingering injury issues, whether on one knee or the other, or he's just going to find his rhythm. Like, there's going to be a struggle there. So to expect him to come in here, play 15 to 20 minutes and have 10 to 15 points per game, solid defense, playmaking, et cetera, that might be a bit of a stretch. So I'm curious to see what happens with him. But yes, he will take over some of Jimmy's minutes once he does come back to this roster.
Well, hopefully we start getting guys back here and we can kind of form more opinions, right? Because that's the other thing, too, is we haven't gotten a chance to see the experiment with Big Yurt and Bam in the front court, right? Where we thought we were going to see so much of that. I still think we will. I said, I just don't think that they want to play Bam and Dwayne Dedmon together for whatever reason. They're more comfortable playing Bam and Yurt together. I think eventually we'll see that. I think we'll see some new stuff probably tonight, just given that 4 of these guys are already out. So I think they're being cautious with these guys, but we'll see what happens. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Make sure to ring the bell to get notified as soon as new episodes go up. We will have a recap of tonight's game against the Raptors later tonight. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining me, David.
Absolutely, Wes.
Recording stopped.